But it's really my pleasure to be able to introduce to you really a wonderful friend and mentor to me is Dr. Joseph Maroon. He is a premier neurosurgeon who works at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. He's been the team neurosurgeon for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's the medical director for the WWE. He's been on the editorial board. He has multiple publications. He's received multiple awards. He's continued to compete in triathlons, and he's competed in over 80 of them.
Well, thank you very much, David. It really is a huge pleasure to be here and really to share my experiences with you and this really unique audience. I would say a very altruistic audience in which your charter is to assist the traumatic brain injury patients in the entire state of Arizona, and not only treat and manage, but also prevent. And along those lines with traumatic brain injury, the topic you've given me is how to improve brain health and memory at any age. Quite a profound type of topic, but what I'm going to do is share with you, this first slide says all you need to know. The eponym SHIELD. You need sleep, you need to handle stress, and this is one of the things I'm going to focus on during this talk, my own personal stresses and how I was fortunate to overcome them and how you can too. I wrote a book that David mentioned, The Secret to a Balanced Life, which is somewhat presumptuous, you may say, but I'll do my best. And the importance of relationships, learning new things, exercising, you'll know what BDNF is, and the importance of diet. These are the keys. Chuck Noll, the former coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, said when he was asked about the complexities of football, he says, football is not complex. He says, it's about blocking and tackling, and those who do that the best win. Life is not complicated. We make it complicated. And these are the simple, in quotes, the simple things that all we have to do is follow this prescription. And the corollary is also true. We know that things that increase your risk, hypertension, smoking, diabetes, these are all things that this audience, very intelligent, already knows. And also, I thought it was the opportunity, given that so many people here are business people, professionals, you all are aware of the 3 A's of success: availability, affability, and ability. Maybe not so aware of the 3 A's of failure: arrogance, avariciousness, and adversarial personalities. You know, arrogance, unfortunately, is one of the worst characteristics that we do see sometime in the medical profession, as well as other professions. But I talk about success and failure because it's going to lead up to what I'm talking about in terms of stress. And recently I read this book, Hiking with Nietzsche by John Cagg, a professor of philosophy at the University of Massachusetts. And most of us equate success, pecuniary, money, power, prestige, status, only after it is obtained does its hollowness become painfully aware. And what I'm going to share is a few thoughts on what happens when one soars too high. You're all familiar with the story of Icarus, imprisoned on the island of Crete with his father Daedalus, and to escape he made wings made of feathers and wax. Cautioned him, when you fly above the people, you may feel the temptation to fly higher and higher, to soar with your successes, experience hubris. And we all know the fate of Icarus. Excuse me. When I first finished my residency, medical school, 10 years of medical school and residency, came to the University of Pittsburgh, I was clearly looking for, in quotes, success. I was appointed chief of neurosurgery at the University Hospital, doing pretty good neurosurgical research with profound hypothermia in treating patients with aneurysms, and was the first physician appointed as a neurosurgical consultant in the NFL to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Then, all of a sudden, in the course of 1 week, a train wreck occurred. My father died at age 60 of a heart attack. My wife left in the middle of winter with 2 kids, literally fled to another city almost. And I was no longer able to do neurosurgery. I was completely incapacitated with stress. One day I was doing awake brain surgery in patients with brain tumors in eloquent parts of their brain. The very next week, I was living in this truck stop bequeathed to my mother by my father in Wheeling, West Virginia, and filling up 18-wheelers, flipping hamburgers, and wondering what in the world happened to my life living in this cold farmhouse in the dead of winter. And it was at that point that I firsthand experienced the cataclysmic effect, the destructive effect of stress, be it the pandemic, be homeschooling with your kids who can't go to school, the soccer mom, whatever. Stress is a universal factor that affects everyone the same. If my toothache hurts, it's no worse than your toothache, regardless of our professions or occupations. So let's talk a little bit about stress. I also became very interested in the mind-body connection, the mind-gut connection, and the new field at the time of psychoneuroimmunology, how the brain affects the body, and also how the body affects the brain. So we know through the endocrine system, the so-called hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, when we're stressed, immense amounts of cortisone and adrenaline are released. These are usually life-saving in terms of fight or flight, in terms of our evolutionary biology. However, when chronic, they literally destroy brains in the cell, destroy cells in the brain, particularly in the area of the hippocampus that subserves memory, also corrodes our coronary arteries, and does very bad things to all of our systems, including our immune system. It suppresses immunity, makes us more susceptible to the virus, more susceptible to heart attacks, strokes, and even cancer. So another anecdotal personal story. When we were on the savannah in Africa being chased by a lion and we lacerated our arms, this is a question for the medical people in the audience. Does your blood become hypercoagulable, or does it bleed even more? Well, stress causes our blood to be hypercoagulable, and acute mental stress, negative emotions, psychological trauma can trigger strokes, heart attacks, and even thromboemboli, pulmonary emboli. This is my coronary artery 2 years ago when I was in the middle of a trial in which I was being sued for malpractice, not only for my malpractice insurance, but also personally for 3 times the damages if a judgment was ruled against me for a jockey that I operated upon doing an anterior cervical discectomy. A screw came loose 3 millimeters, and because he was bulimia and had poor bone healing. But it was a 3-week trial, and I was on cross-examined for 3 days, 3 full days. And the day the jury was coming back with a verdict, I told my attorney, I don't think I should go to court, because if the verdict's against me, I don't think I'll make it out of the courtroom. I went to the hospital, had this angiogram, this stent was placed, and subsequently I got back to my normal life and have done well. But trying to make lemonade out of lemons, I wrote this paper on catastrophic cardiovascular complications from medical malpractice stress syndrome. Again, simply, ladies and gentlemen, the indication of what stress can do to your body. So how did I get out of this dilemma living in a truck stop? I picked up this book by William Danforth entitled I Dare You, the founder of the Rolston Purina Company. And this was given to me by a high school award many years ago. And right now, I want you to pay attention, and I want you to look at this square, and I want you to now draw it in your own mind, your own hippocampus. Work, relationships, spirituality, and physical. Now, I want you to draw a line commensurate with how much effort and time you put on each one of these in your daily life. Just do it. Do it right now in your mind. This is what mine looked like. It was all work. The bottom one is more typical. No relationships, no spirituality, and there was no physical. I was 15, 20 pounds overweight and totally out of balance, if you would. So how did I come back? After the failure of SSRIs and psychotherapy, the banker who held the mortgage to the truck stop called me one day and said, "Joe, let's go for a run." I said, "Run? I can't walk up a flight of steps, much less run." I think he wanted to know if I'd be around long enough to pay off the mortgage on the truck stop. Regardless, I found a pair of shoes, a pair of scrubs. We went down to this track in Wheeling, West Virginia, and I made it around 4 times. I thought I'd die. I said, never again. But that night was the first night I slept in probably 3 or 4 months. So I went back the next day myself, and I made it 5 times, and then 7, and then 8. Pretty soon I was like Forrest Gump running through Wheeling, West Virginia. There he goes. And but at that time, I started to feel better as the unintended side effect of pursuing a goal beyond what I had chosen to do, actually. And in this, I learned to bike, I learned to swim, I entered into a Tin Man triathlon, and subsequently into the Ironman triathlon. I got accepted by a lottery, which is, as David mentioned, is a 2.4-mile ocean swim, 112-mile bike, followed by a marathon. And I was able to, I'm still competing, not at that level, but at Olympic distance races. And in fact, I did one 2 weeks ago, came in first in my age group. And when you do an Ironman, you're so allegedly, you have bragging rights for the rest of your life. Well, I finished first in my age group, but I have to tell you, in all honesty, I was the only one in my age group. So regardless, it's still a great accomplishment, and I enjoy it. And most importantly, what I'm telling you is the best antidepressant is aerobic activity. And this is well known. Head-to-head studies show this to be true. And my father died at age 60 of a heart attack. So I thought that any year beyond 60 would be a bonus year for me. I'm now 20 years past 60. And fortunately, due to epigenetic factors and choices, I'm still functioning at, I think, a pretty high level. Epigenetics refers, our genes are like a blueprint on our chromosomes. They lay out on a table, they do nothing until they're acted upon. Those factors that act upon genes are called epigenetic, above the genome. What are they? Nutrition, exercise, environmental factors, and control of stress. Nutritional factors. If we eat a Big Mac with meat infused with antibiotics and hormones in a feedlot, fed corn grown from Iowa on glyphosate, it's going to tell your transcription factors in every cell of your body to tell your genes to make inflammatory agents. What's the common cause of cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's disease, and stroke? Inflammation. Whatever we can do to reduce inflammation will help prolong our mental stability and our lives. Exercise, environmental factors, and the other are the same. So the nutritional factors, the diet that I mentioned earlier, a Mediterranean diet, polyphenols, supplements appropriately, omega-3 fatty acids, and exercise. What does exercise? What was happening to my brain when I was running around that track and afterwards? I was making a compound called BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor. BDNF creates new neurons, neuronogenesis. It increases the synaptic connections between neurons, and it enhances neuroplasticity, the ability to take huge amounts of information and focus it in a conversation just like we're having now. Environmental factors, reduce smoking, alcohol, all the things you know, and emotional stress control. Religion, relationships, meditation, spirituality is a key to maintaining medical health. A little bit about the spiritual side of the square now. The purpose of life is a life of purpose. The most important thing we can ask is what is why? Why do we do what we do? And as Nietzsche said, if you know the why, we can tolerate almost anyhow. So what does this scene of the starting of the Hawaiian Ironman have to do with spirituality? Well, I can tell you, it's a very spiritual experience to stand there with 2,000 other competitors, a mass start, not knowing if you're going to finish the 142 miles and what you do. So I have a mantra that I repeat to put myself more or less in a meditative state. And it's, he who trusts in the Lord shall be renewed. He shall rise up on wings like an eagle. He shall run and not be weary, and walk and not be fatigued. So what does that have to do with this herniated disc here? This is the disc, the spinal cord, in this young nurse here in Pittsburgh a few years back, with whom I'm praying before surgery. Well, what's the most stressful part of an individual's life? It's when they're lying on a gurney, ready to be wheeled into the operating room to have their brain or spinal cord operated on. And I'll frequently ask them if they're a believer. I'll take their hand and I'll say, today is the day the Lord hath made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And with your help, get Mary or John back to her family. I can't tell you how powerful that is. And when I turned this lady on her stomach, this is the quotation she had tattooed on her back from Isaiah 40:31. But those who wait on the Lord shall rise up with wings and have their strength renewed. You know, the likelihood of that happening, just unbelievable. So when we think, if I ask the audience, what are the three most important things in your life? Physical and mental health are by far paramount. Relationships, God, family, friends, and colleagues. And today, carpe diem. So in summary, ladies and gentlemen, I've shared with you a lot of information about stress, about epigenetics and gene activation, about how to live a healthy and longer life by modulating your diet, your exercise, your environmental factors. Your emotional health is absolutely key. And doing all of these things in terms of adequate sleep, interaction with others, exercise, and diet, as I said, hopefully you will attain the best things you can do to prevent dementia, to prevent mental breakdown, and to control stress. So I deeply appreciate the opportunity to summarize things so succinctly for you. And David, even to meet you on Zoom is even a great pleasure, and congratulations on the tremendous work you're doing, and continue the great work. Thank you.